Hey there, folks. Happy Friday to you. Hope you had a fantastic week trading. Coming at you with this week's market wrap and sector watch video. What an impressive market we have had. We had the Fed this week. We had earnings, which actually I think it was a bit of a mixed bag, but for the most part, I think it's given the bulls something to hold on to here. And, they've we've had some really fantastic earnings within the tech sector. And even though oil was really weak all week long, the energy sector actually held up fairly well. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at what happened this week. And last week our favorite sectors were the IBB and the IWM. And not a whole lot has changed from that standpoint. Let's take a look at those two to start us off here. Let's go to the IBB. So, look, very impressive. And here's what's nice about this is that we're coming up into this key area of resistance. Now, actually, the area of resistance I was talking about before was this 287 area. But, we're really not out of the woods just yet. If you look at it, we've got some resistance here, and now here we are hitting this resistance again. The difference, though, between us hitting that resistance here and here is we're now above the 200-day EMA and SMA, which I think is a pretty positive thing for the bulls. What we were concerned about back here in this area was that we might find some resistance in this trend line and then pull back and maybe take out 240 and make a new, make a lower high and then a lower low. And that no longer is the concern. Even if we pull back here, I think at this particular time with the IBB, unless we really get a big rollover in the markets, I think this 271 area, 272, could actually hold as decent support this time. We broke through it here. We pulled back, and then it couldn't find support. We broke through again, pulled back, couldn't find support, acted as resistance. We finally popped through. So if we do pull back, maybe we find some support there in the 270, 272 area. But IBB still looks incredibly strong and something that we want to keep an eye on, I think, next week to see if we can really get some continuation and potentially go up and test the $300 holla. That's what I'm looking for, right? We talked about that over the last couple of weeks, looking for a potential test of the $300 holla on the IBB. Let's take a look at the IWM, which has been consolidating extremely well. Well within the Bollinger Band. We came up into this area of price resistance. We've broken above it, and now we're consolidating. We haven't gone parabolic. We may consolidate a bit more before we actually decide which way to make a move, but still looking really, really strong. We've had some of these low floater, speculative type names that have been making some incredible moves. And we had a couple of those this week, a couple of them off of our stocks to watch list from Ticker TV, but really still looks very constructive for the IWM. So let's take a look at the NASDAQ, which had really some fantastic earnings. And look, it's right at resistance, but it's within the upper Bollinger Band. It is in a nice trend higher. Everybody and their brother is having a really difficult time with the strength of this market, right? What was it, last week or week before, everyone talking about volatility being so low, and when it's at these levels, that's when the market tends to roll over. Well, guess what? This market isn't doing what everyone thinks it should do. And I think because there are so many non-believers, one of the things that does happen, it always says, markets climb the wall of worry, and it looks like they continue to do that, right? So NASDAQ, Google crushed, Amazon crushed. Some really impressive earnings this week. Twitter disappointed, but some impressive earnings. We are at this area of resistance. Could we consolidate here a little bit? Sure, we certainly could. But, I think the NASDAQ really wants to try and at least go tag all-time highs. So looking pretty healthy for the NASDAQ as well. Now let's take a look at SMH, which was another sector that we really liked last week. And, some great earnings out of that sector. Some M&A activity out of that sector this week. So had a big move on SMH. And for the last 3 days, we've been pulling back a little bit. Now we've got a 5-day EMA, which it's still hanging on to. Did have this lower volume pullback. It is overbought. It's working off that overbought condition. We'll see if we can continue to consolidate a bit. There is a gap to fill here on the daily, potentially pull back down into this $60 area, right? $59.95, $60. You fill that gap. It could happen. But, I think the SMH really has some positive momentum going for it. Some good news coming out of the sector. And I would be looking for opportunities in some of the semiconductor stocks on a pullback. Let's see what else we've got going on. So S&P 500, look at this. We are just consolidating, right? We continue to consolidate in a very tight range, working off the overbought condition. Really have no reason to try and be a hero and short this thing here until you get a confirmed breakdown. And we don't have that yet. So S&P 500 looks really, really strong. Let's take a look at what happened with gold, right? Gold broke down. Basically, I thought maybe we were going to come down and test this 124 area. Got close, didn't quite get there, but nice little snapback after pulling back a bit. Look, it's still a lower high, right? So until we get back up here and take out this 131 area, I would still be somewhat cautious with gold. GDX and the miners actually looks pretty good. It looks like the miners really kind of want to continue to make a move higher. GDX, GDXJ, Nugget, JNUG, those all actually had pretty nice little moves. Before I go to those, let's just take a look at Labu real quick, which has had a really nice move. I've been talking about this one. If you didn't have anything in biotech that you really would be interested in playing, Labu is a good way to play the IBB, and it's had a really nice move. Looking at a potential $42 roll, maybe you find some resistance right there at the 200-day simple moving average at 45.93. Mid caps look really, really nice, just like the IWM. Let's see what else we've got going on here. I will say this, listen, the T2107, T2108 haven't shown this in a while, but this is when we get up into the 70 area for the T2107, T2108. That is kind of nosebleed area. That's an area where you should be trimming profits, locking some profits, and not really starting a whole lot of long-term swing positions or long-term holds because it is up in the 70 area, and that is kind of nosebleed area. That's an area that is something that I am paying attention to. But look, just because things are overbought doesn't mean that they can't stay overbought. They can for a while, especially when you have such a bearish tone. Volatility, we have none. We have zero volatility. TVX, UVXY, no volatility at all. Looking like it actually wants to go lower. Until you see some real weakness in the markets, I think you're going to have a difficult time with trying to play volatility. UUP, the dollar. So this week, the dollar got pounded, had some weakness in the dollar, and that also is what helped gold and silver kind of make their move, right? The weakness in the dollar. And that's something that I think we want to continue to pay close attention to next week. Let's take a look at silver, as a matter of fact, because that also had a nice little move and actually looks like it may want to move up a little higher. All right, coming right up into this price resistance, potentially looking for a $20 holla, $20 roll. I think silver is something that you want to keep an eye on. This is kind of interesting. You know, SEA shippers, not this week, but the week before, had an interesting little move, right? Interesting little pop. And what I'm looking at here at this with the SEA is, you know, kind of got a little bit of a flat top breakout thing going on, maybe a trend line break if it can get over 1150 with conviction. So, you know, it's been a really beaten up sector, the shipping sector. So, you know, if it breaks over this trend line with conviction, maybe we see some good action out of some of the shipper names. Just something to kind of keep an eye on. So one thing I did want to let's see. So if there was anything to find some weakness, it's in the transportation sector, right? We took a little bit of a hit. Airlines were taking a little bit of a hit today. Had a little bit of a pullback. You know, closed. Actually, we closed above this trend line, but we're testing this trend line, right? Potentially looking to pull back. What else we got here? We got the 200-day EMA. That looks like it's acting as support. If that breaks down, things could get concerning in the transportation sector. Let's take a look at something else that. Okay, ITB, which is the home construction index. So you know, it was consolidating really nice and tight, just like the S&P 500, just like the IWM, right? And actually got a bit of a pull on some fairly decent volume and closed right at the low of the day. So that is another area of potential concern, right? But there are way more better looking sectors out there than those two, right? Materials sector, you know, actually had a little bit of a pull today, but managed to bounce back. Overbought. You do have stochastics crossing to the downside. But here was what was kind of interesting today, energy. So, you know, oil looked as though it wanted to head right for the 200 or the $40 a barrel mark. If it breaks below 40, I think things could get problematic, you know, for the energy names. We got the rig counts today. They came up. I think we had added three rigs. You know, not a big deal, but the drawdowns for supply haven't been that fantastic. So, you know, this is interesting that we found some support here at the 200-day moving average. We bounced off it, closed nearly at the high of the day, even though we had a really weak week in oil. And let's just see where oil did close. Let's take a look at that real quick. All right, so we had a little bit of a bounce in oil. Nothing significant. It was a little bounce. That's interesting, right? Coming up into resistance, which this acted as resistance, acted as support, now acting as resistance. We are really oversold, okay? So it wouldn't be a huge shock if we did get a bounce in oil, and then if we get a bounce in oil, maybe we get some of those energy names that actually make a move higher as well. So let's take a look at financials, which are also consolidating really nicely, right? Right at this trend line. I mean, it popped up into this and it's just been consolidating. You know, right now, as a matter of fact, I think we're getting some bank stress tests out of the euro. That could impact financials next week, but you know, they're holding up fairly well. I mean, if they take out this trend line with conviction, you could see some nice action within the financials. those are tough to take for day trades. Usually better for swing trades, stuff like that. But uh, I think it's worth keeping an eye on the financials. Industrials, have had a little bit of a pullback. Jeffrey Emmelt, I think, bought 50,000 shares of GE after the close yesterday. Industrials consolidating, still look fairly bullish, and actually starting to approach, oversold conditions. So worth keeping an eye on the industrials. Let's take a look at utilities, which are consolidating, considered to be the safety trade. Consolidating. What else we got? Healthcare looks pretty darn good, right? Broke over this price resistance and now consolidating, working off the overbought condition, building up some energy, potentially for a move higher. Consumer discretionary looking pretty darn good. All these look real similar, right? We're just kind of consolidating before our next move, working off the overbought condition that we were in. And, we'll see what happens next week. Metals and miners, have that pullback, but, have had a nice bounce and look as though they want to go higher. Let me take a look and see what we've got here for potential. Oh, look at that. Isn't that something? All right, so we're right at an area of potential price resistance at this 29.50 or so. If we can take 29.50 out with conviction, maybe we see a nice move in the metals and miners. Oil exploration, just like the some of those, the XLE, nice little bounce, closed nearly at the high of the day. If we get a bounce in oil next week, maybe we see some oil exploration names make a nice move. And let's take a look at retail, which has been holding up fairly well, working off the overbought condition over the 200-day moving average. I mean, a lot of these sectors look pretty darn good. I mean, listen, I want to be a bear because I want the markets to pull back and give me some opportunities to load up in my long-term hold IRA with some beaten up names. I will tell you that I am really stocking Gilead. I mean, that is a stock that closed at the low of the day. It gets down to this $78 area. I'm gonna have to start potentially dipping my toe there. But I really want to see the markets pull back, but it's difficult to it's difficult to get bearish in a market that looks so good. I mean, there's a lot of good looking sectors out there, and next week we'll see. I don't know what we've got coming up for economic data next week, but we'll take a look at that and do stocks to watch on Sunday, 8 a.m. Las Vegas time. We'll go over some stocks to watch. We had a huge list. Had to do 2 videos last week. Had such a big list of stocks to watch for the following week, but I'm sure there's going to be some good looking, compelling looking setups out there. The stocks to watch this week there were several stocks that did incredibly well. Hopefully you got some of those. But for the most part, I remain fairly bullish, right? I mean, anything could happen. Something terrible could happen over the weekend and change that whole thesis. But for right now, technically, we're looking at a pretty darn impressive market. So bullish for next week. I hope you can make it to Stocks to Watch on Sunday at 8 a.m. If you can't, hey, just send me, and you've got some stocks you would like me to go over. Send them to me. Email them. Tweet them. And I will do my best to get them on the list Sunday. All right? Okay. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see some of you on Sunday, and the rest of you, I'll see you all next week.